The most famous graph in psychology is fake. You've seen it. A little stick figure climbs a mountain of confidence, reaches a peak called Mount Stupid, then falls off a cliff into a valley of despair, before slowly climbing the slope of enlightenment. That graph is everywhere. It's on LinkedIn, in TED Talks, in your group chat whenever someone wants to call somebody else an idiot. There's just one problem. It never appeared in the study it's supposedly based on. And the effect it describes, a serious 2020 paper argues it might not even be real. Sort of. So today, what the Dunning-Kruger effect actually says, why that curve is a lie, what the science really shows, and how to use all of it to get fooled by your own brain a little less often. It starts with a bank robber. In 1995, a man named MacArthur Wheeler walked into two banks in Pittsburgh in broad daylight, pointed a gun at the tellers, and made no attempt to hide his face. He even smiled at the security cameras. That night, the footage aired on the news, and the police arrested him within the hour. When they showed him the tape, Wheeler was genuinely stunned. He said, "But I wore the juice." Wheeler believed that rubbing lemon juice on his skin would make his face invisible to cameras, because lemon juice can be used as invisible ink. He was so confident he had even tested it by taking a blurry selfie that, to him, seemed to prove it worked. A psychologist named David Dunning read that story, and it stuck with him. If a man could be that wrong and that sure at the same time, maybe incompetence and confidence were somehow connected. So he and his student, Justin Kruger, decided to test it. In 1999, Kruger and Dunning ran a simple study. They gave students tests in 3 areas: humor, logical reasoning, and grammar. Then they asked each person one extra question. How do you think you did compared to everyone else? Here's what they found. The people who scored the worst, the bottom of the class, did not just do badly. They thought they did great. On average, the bottom group scored near the 12th percentile, but guessed they were up around the 62nd. They believed they were comfortably above average while sitting near the very bottom. Now the explanation is the part actually worth remembering, and it's more elegant than the meme. The skills you need to be good at something are the very same skills you need to recognize that you're bad at it. Think about grammar. If you don't know the rule, you can't catch yourself breaking it. The mistake and the blindness to the mistake come from the exact same gap. So the least skilled people get hit with a double penalty. They fail, and they lack the tools to notice they failed. That's the real Dunning-Kruger effect. Not stupid people are loud. It's that incompetence is often invisible to the person who has it. But before you start picturing other people, here's the uncomfortable part. This is not only about the bottom of the class. Almost all of us overrate ourselves constantly. The cleanest example comes from driving. In a famous 1981 study by the psychologist Ola Svensson, people were asked to rate their own driving against everyone else's. Depending on the exact question, somewhere between 70 and 90% of drivers rated themselves as safer and more skillful than the average driver. Sit with that for a second. By definition, only half of people can be better than the median, but 70 to 90% were sure they were in the top half. And this isn't some quirk of the 1970s. It's been replicated, with over 90% still rating themselves above average. Psychologists call this illusory superiority, or the better-than-average effect, and it is everywhere. People rate themselves above average at their jobs, in their relationships, at being ethical, even at being good at spotting bias in other people. So Dunning-Kruger is really just one corner of a much bigger, much more human problem. Your mind is a confidence machine, and it almost never tells you when it's running on empty. Okay, so the effect is pointing at something real. But that famous curve, go back to the actual 1999 paper. The graphs inside are honestly boring. They plot what people thought they scored against what they actually scored, split into 4 groups, and that's about it. There is no mountain. There is no valley of despair. There is no peak labeled Mount Stupid. That whole roller coaster shape, the confident beginner who crashes and slowly recovers, was invented later on the internet by people summarizing a study they mostly hadn't read. And the invented version quietly changed the meaning. The meme says beginners are wildly overconfident, then crash into despair, then climb back as wise experts. The real data says something softer and stranger. Almost everyone thinks they're a bit above average, and the worst performers are simply the most wrong about it. No cliff, no despair arc, just a gentle, nearly universal tilt toward thinking we're better than we are. So the picture got flattened into a story that's easier to share and easier to feel smug about. Fine. But an exaggerated effect is still an effect, right? Well, in 2020, a pair of researchers said, maybe not even that. In 2020, Gilles Gignac and Marcin Zajankovsky published a paper with a blunt title. The Dunning-Kruger effect is mostly a statistical artifact. Their argument is subtle, so let me make it concrete. Imagine you ask 1,000 random people to guess their own IQ. And suppose, just for the sake of argument, that people are completely useless at this. They guess almost at random, with basically no real self-knowledge. Pure noise. Now here's the trick. Sort everyone by their actual ability and look at the people who genuinely scored at the bottom. Those low scorers literally cannot guess much lower than they really are because there's a flaw at the bottom of the scale. So on average, their guesses land above their real score. They look overconfident. And the people who genuinely scored at the top can't guess much higher than they are, so on average they look modest, even humble. Put those two together, and you get the Dunning-Kruger shape, the overconfident bottom, the humble top, falling straight out of data that contained zero real psychological effect. It's a property of the math, not the mind. That's the claim. A big chunk of what we call Dunning-Kruger might be a statistical mirage, a thing called autocorrelation. Now, before you cancel the whole idea, the story is not over. Because other researchers pushed back, and hard. They argued that the artifact result leans on very specific choices about how you process and recode the data, and that with different, equally defensible choices, a genuine effect survives the statistics. So the honest answer, the one most videos on this topic skip, is that this is a live scientific argument. It is not settled. But if you strip away the myth and the hot takes, you're left with three things that really are well supported. 1. People on average overrate themselves. Most of us believe we're above average, which is statistically impossible. 2. Poor performers do tend to be the most overconfident, partly for real psychological reasons and partly because of how the math shakes out. And 3. That clean, dramatic Mount Stupid curve is fiction. And honestly, the real lesson is better than the cartoon. It's about metacognition, which just means thinking about your own thinking. The point was, never assume you're an idiot. The point is that the feeling of confidence and the fact of competence are two completely separate things, and they do not always travel together. So what do you actually do with this? You can't just decide to be humble. That's not how brains work. But you can build a few habits that catch the gap. First, when you feel certain, treat that feeling as a flag, not a fact. The moment of maximum confidence is exactly the moment to slow down and check your work. Second, go looking for the thing that would prove you wrong. Most of us quietly collect evidence that we're right. The calibrated move is to ask, what would I expect to see if I were mistaken? And then actually go look for it. Third, keep score. Write down your predictions and check them against what really happens. Nothing humbles a confident brain faster than a written record of the times it was sure and wrong. And here's the strange comfort in all of this. Real expertise often doesn't feel like certainty. It feels like seeing more and more of what you still don't know. So if you've ever felt that the more you learn about something, the less sure you become, that might not be imposter syndrome. That might just be your competence finally catching up to your confidence. So no, you're not standing on Mount Stupid. That mountain was never real. But the humility the myth was reaching for, that part is absolutely worth keeping. Subscribe and I'll see you there.